Board of Directors meeting for HART will come to order. It's 8:30 a.m. Let's see. Item 2 on the agenda is public testimony on any agenda item, or actually there's only one agenda item here. Seeing none. Item number 3, the approval of minutes. The minutes are not ready yet, so we'll have it at the next board meeting for approval. Moving to item number 4, fiscal year 2018 operating and capital budget and 6-year capital program. I believe Diane?
Good morning. I'm Diana Rakaki, your Chief Financial Officer, and I'm here to discuss the fiscal year 2018 operating and capital budgets. That we have here a schedule of our budget process, which is similar to what we follow every year. And as you know, the requested budget was referred by your board to your Finance Committee, and on November 10th, the Finance Committee took up consideration of the operating and capital budgets for 2018. I'm here today to present to you what was presented to that committee and what that committee recommended, is recommending to you today. So, without further ado, I will go into this. One other issue is, after your meeting today and prior to December 1st, per city charter, the HART board is required to submit the requested operating and capital budgets to the mayor and council by December 1st. In the winter and spring of next year, 2017, next calendar year, council will review our budget as they have over the last several years in the inception of HART. And I will be returning to you prior to June 30th in 2017 to ask for your review and adoption of the 2018 budget fiscal year starting July 1st. So that is our schedule for the operating and capital budgets. And if there are no questions on the schedule, I'll continue on to our operating budget for 2018. As you can see, most of our operating budget request for 2018 is made up of staff and salary costs in the blue shaded area, the larger blue, light blue shaded area, and the green area, which is represents, we anticipate paying in debt financing and interest costs to finance the project. The purple area on this pie chart represents space and equipment costs. So this room and the other 3 floors and a place that we occupy is represented in the purple sliver, purple slice in this operating budget pie chart. The dark blue area represents advertising, construction management system, legal, insurance, and professional services fees and costs. And the red slice represents city reimbursements that we make for services that we use by the city, including our direct memorandums of understanding with various city departments, including Corporation Counsel for representation and legal services. So that, in a nutshell, or in a pie chart, is summarizes our operating budget request to you for fiscal 18. And what I'd like to do now is just go to the actual budget and just very quickly go through the changes that we're requesting for next fiscal year. And the first of which is in our labor costs. In that area, staff is recommending, based on a bottoms-up, thorough analysis and internal discussions among management at HART with respect to our current and future anticipated staffing needs and resource needs for fiscal 16, we are requesting a net increase of 16 new positions. That is what's included in the $1.3 million and the associated fringe benefit costs of $489,000. What's also included in that is the last year of a multi-year labor contract salary increases for existing staff. and an increase of $94,000 for our OPEB contribution for next year, for a total of just over $2 million of cost increases in your labor area. And I can go into that in more detail as I run through this. But going down the column, I'm on page 9 here of the requested budget material. So approximately $2 million is what we're asking for increases in staff to address both overtime, some of the overtime that we've experienced issues, and our anticipated needs going forward, including complying and putting money in there for the third year of a multi-year labor contract. So under current expenses, we have a $16,000 net increase that we're asking for additional software licenses for the construction management system. And computer software maintenance agreement is going down, but that's offset below under equipment and software for a net increase. So we're moving some costs where it's more appropriately classified. So net, we're going up by some and moving some down and putting things in the proper places. And part of the increases is due to purchasing proprietary software from a contractor that we will be taking over in FY18. The fees and memberships category, we're requesting an increase of $96,390. That represents a net increase of $125,000 due to our HART's share of the Oahu Metropolitan Planning Organization fees, of which we are a member now. So due to that significant increase in that category, we're requesting an increase there. Parts and hardware, a $6,000 increase for additional computers and upgrades to our hardware. Some of our hardware, I understand, is about 6 years old. Professional services direct reimbursement increase of $47,155 is a net increase due to our increase in our indirect costs that we pay to the city, which is based on 5% of our operating budget, as well as a slight increase in our memorandum of understanding with understandings with 3 departments, primarily Corporation Counsel, Department of Planning and Permitting, and the Budget and Fiscal Services Department. Professional services other of $383,000 is a net increase is being requested, primarily consisting of 2 things. One is $180,000 to fund 2 positions to conduct business outreach through the Small Business Development Corporation, and the balance of the $383,000 is to fund material and other rental and fee costs associated with an increase in our public involvement, community and business outreach programs. 2 of the 16 new positions that we're asking for, I might add, are included in the personal services increase. We're also requesting 2 public involvement folks to assist us and be specifically dedicated to community and business outreach. So in total, there will be four bodies that we will be increasing in the community business outreach area, and just over $200,000 in programmatic and programming material costs to address this area. And at this time, I'd also like to point out that that's associated with the commensurate or somewhat commensurate decrease of $2 million in the line item at the bottom of the current expenses category called Transit Mitigation Fund. As you recall, last year, Council added that in an effort to assist us in improving our community and business outreach efforts. Unfortunately, direct compensation payments due to adverse impacts of our construction project cannot be made to businesses per FDA regulation. So in its place, or we have heard the message, and what we're proposing is those 4 positions with additional programming costs to address additional community and business outreach and assistance efforts. So I wanted to kind of explain that programmatically to you. So while we're having a decrease in one area, we're increasing our expenditures in others to address that programmatic need. Rent, $676,433. We're asking for a net increase of that. Also, Council reduced our budget by $806,000 in the current year for rent. Unfortunately, we have gone back and done our research, and we are engaged in we have a lease, and leases that should we break, we would still be liable for financially. So upon significant analysis and discussions, and in addition to which we have, per a recommendation 2 years ago in a performance audit by the city auditor, in which one of the recommendations recommended that we seriously consider co-housing and providing office space at a lower cost to several of our contractors. We have done that. So should we choose to undo that, it would probably result in cost increases. And I've been told that staff has estimated a $1.6 million savings from changing existing contracts as well as engaging in new contracts in which we agree to provide office space. So should we choose not to continue with the leases we currently have, these would be savings that would not materialize. So what this request is requesting is that we continue renting the space we currently have on the 23rd, 17th, 11th floors and part of this first floor, including this room, until through FY18. Our lease on the 11th floor expires at the end of the current fiscal year. What this net increase of $676,000 represents is a request to you to continue leasing that 11th floor. And that a little bit further long-term strategy is that we continue the leases on the other 2 floors on 17 and 23 that currently run through 2020. And at that time, when the leases for all collectively the spaces expire, by then staff would come to you, and at that point we'll have a clear understanding of what our total long-term office space needs will be going forward there after 2020, and come to you with a plan for office space or some other alternative. The alternative is that we default on our leases and incur those costs nonetheless. So with respect to just next year's budget, the $676,000 represents a continuation of the lease on the 11th floor and preserving our current total office space rental.
So I don't understand. Why does that increase from 17 to 18? Because we currently are leasing the 11th floor.
Yes, the council decreased the current year 17's budget by $806,000,
Right.
and we're asking to.
So we were actually authorized a much lower line item budget for office rental space for FY17.
Right. So what's happened to the 11th floor?
We are still leasing it, but we are paying for the rent via other savings in our operating budget.
So it's not in that line. So is this a true increase?
Yes, it reflects actual rental amounts for FY18.
Yes.
It's an increase in the budget. It's not an increase in the actual amount we're paying.
So what's reflected as the 17 budget is not necessarily what close to what the actual is.
Correct.
That's correct. And in the spring.
So what I want to understand then is the 18 budget really more reflective of what the actual cost for lease rent is?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And should we have a shortfall in the operating budget in 17 in the current fiscal year due to the reduction of $806,000, I will return to you in the spring and definitely before June 30 to ask you for an amendment to continue that would allow us budgetarily by appropriation to continue paying for the lease on the 11th floor in this fiscal year.
Sorry, Diane, a question. Who are we using, if anyone, in the brokerage community to help us evaluate our office needs and market rents and that sort of thing? Do you know?
I don't know the specific firm name, but I know that I guess I'm not sure what your question is.
In other
Would
words,
you mind asking?
we don't do the leasing in-house, right? I mean, we must use an outside firm CBRE or
We
Colliers?
can double check and confirm for you if we are using an outside agency, but I do think, my understanding is the majority of our negotiations with the landlord is done via our own internal staff.
I see. The only reason I think it would be worthwhile to investigate using an outside broker is because they have a better understanding what the market is and what
Sure.
you know, the projections are a year, 2, 3 years down the road. And so, you know, I don't want to miss an opportunity to get a more favorable office arrangement if opportunities out there exist.
Okay.
Yeah, on that note, I do have a conflict of interest, but as a trustee of the state retirement system, I'd urge you to contact the leasing agent for the city financial tower, because we have, I think, office space that is both on the ground floor as well as in upper floors that will soon become vacant. And so I'd urge you to
Okay.
see whether or not you can get a better competitive quote from the ERS.
Okay. I will do that.
Thank you.
I will make that note. Thank you. And as we work our way down here, we've added at the Finance Committee hearing, added $250,000 for special audit services. HART's currently engaged in a peer review to address contract administration and change order management processes in addition to completing HART's annual financial audit. The peer review may also recommend other programmatic improvements. Funding for these special audit services at $250,000 are being included in the budget should the board determine other audit services be needed for a scope of work yet to be determined. So that's that item, and I've explained the reduction of the $2 million for the transit mitigation fund, and which leaves us our last area in our current expenses budget, out-of-state travel. And what this represents is we polled everyone in the organization and asked them to put forth travel and training requests, and what this represents before you, it's an increase. The fiscal 16 budget was $95,000 for out-of-state travel, including HART board travel. The current fiscal year 17 budget is at $47,500. It was cut by approximately 50%, as suggested by council and approved by your board this past June. So right now we're at $47,500. For next fiscal year, where staff is requesting $135,000 in travel, and this request represents a process that we went through internally from the bottoms up and asked everyone what their needs were with respect to recertifications and mandatory travel. What this request represents is staff's recommendation for mandatory travel and meetings, mandatory meeting travel and critical conference training certification, out-of-state travel, including your board's travel to conferences, including Revolution. So that's my description of the history, where we are today, and what the request is for next year. So it represents an increase over what we currently have. Proceeding on to the debt service area, staff is also recommending an increase of $2 million from 10 to 12 million. That represents the current cash flow with a total program cost of $6.8 billion. Based on our current cash flow, next fiscal year, our plan indicates that we will be paying and need to set aside, therefore, $2 million more than what we have. And as you know, we've recently started borrowing. We don't anticipate spending all of the $10 million in the current fiscal year, but we do anticipate, based on the fact that we have borrowed and we will be issuing long-term debt next year, that most of this $12 million will be needed, if not all of it. So that, in a nutshell, is the increases and decreases in the operating budget. I can, if there are questions about, if you'd like me to go into further detail about the positions being requested, I'm happy to. If not, the material is in front of you. I am happy to answer any questions you might have about them before proceeding to the capital budget.
Dan, I just have a quick one, and it's just more of, I think it's a typo on the special audit services.
Yes.
Wouldn't that percent be 100%, not 0? You're
Sorry.
adding to it, huh? And then-
Yes, thank you.
Mhm.
We'll be doing that. Thank you for that, Damien. We will add that to the chart. So, formula. So that's a new type of cost here. So we will make that change before we submit it to the mayor and council on December 1st.
Diane, I know this question's been asked. I'm not sure, I can't remember what the answer was, but, typically you would want to see quarterly, or at least, a budget to actual analysis.
Yes.
So that we can see how faithfully we're adhering to the budget. My recollection is during the Finance Committee meeting, we've requested that you do that analysis for the prior budgets, just so that we can, have a more informed basis to evaluate each line item in the budget.
Yes, and while it's not quarterly, it's on an annual basis. On page 26 of your budget submittal, there's a fiscal 2013 to 2017 operating budget to actual report. So it lists pretty much almost since the inception of the agency, what the actual expenditures were, 2013 through 15, the budget for last fiscal year, 2016, the actuals, the differences. It lists the current FY17 budget. And I haven't included the budget to actual quarterly, but I could. It's just that it's not very meaningful since it's only 3 months, or maybe now 4 months into the fiscal year. But I can provide that to you should you want it going forward. I have been providing it on a monthly basis to the executive director, budget to actual, starting from the 4th month of the fiscal year, or the first quarter, and so forth. So starting with budget to actual reports ending September and monthly thereafter is what I normally provide to the executive director, and I can make those reports available to you if you'd like as well.
Yeah, personally, I think that's a good idea, just so
Great.
that,
Okay,
we can
will do.
track how we're doing.
Will do. Thank you.
Diane, I have a question.
Yes.
Do we have any idea how we compare to other departments like DPP, DPC, maybe DOT or Water District, as far as manpower and labor costs?
I think I might, since I'm not an expert on large construction projects, if I might defer to our executive director to maybe address, if you're referring to staffing levels?
Yeah, just to make sure that we're in the ballpark, and as well as other authorities, transit authorities nationwide, if we have that kind of information, so that we can benchmark ourselves.
Well, if I can, maybe Glenn, just give you our budget, our proposed budget. Right now, we have approximately 270 individuals in DPP with a operating budget of $21 million approximately.
Thank you.
I guess for comparison purposes, it's a little bit more difficult to give you an apples to apples comparison, because most of these other agencies, DOT, DDC, those that provide project delivery services, are longer term in nature compared to HART, where we are much more temporary in nature, and our cycle goes up and down in terms of the amount of contract value that we are constructing. And so we are primarily consultant driven in terms of providing the resources for the technical capacity. But in terms of the city staff that we have, I would say my personal opinion is that we are understaffed for the amount of construction value that we're putting out on a regular basis, which is why you see some of the requests that we have in terms of increasing by a couple of additional assistant project managers, specifically for the west side. In other areas, we are staffed up much more significantly on the field side through our CNI contracts, which is typically larger than what you would normally see some of these departments putting out in terms of contracts or consulting contracts. So it's hard to give you an apples to apples comparison, but my personal opinion is that for the most part, we have been somewhat understaffed, which I think we're trying to rectify right now.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the points I was getting to, because it seems to me, if you look at gross dollars, we seem to be understaffed. If going forward, we're looking at maybe capital of about $700 million a year for the next 4 or 5 years. And if you take out debt service, we're at $23 million. It's only 3%. So for industry, private sector, we're looking at 6 to 12%.
And I think part of your question will be addressed through our peer review that APTA is going to be performing, because one of their tasks is technical capacity of our staff. So we will be getting some feedback from some of the peer reviewers who do come from either large programs or from other transit agencies. So we will get a much better feel from them as to what they view our staffing levels are, both from a in-house city staff as well as our consultant staff.
Okay. But I think it's still good for at least us to have that information. The other agencies in the city, DOT, Oahu District, as far as their highways division, and maybe some of the nationwide, if we can get that data. Sure.
So yes, it does look like in 16 and forward, we are going to be increasing our staffing into 18. And where we will be in 18 is just finished. We will have all 3 segments going, wrapping up some like at Wolf, but also very much into AGS. So that's the assumption we're making for this as part of the staff request. So if there are no questions on the operating budget, I'd like to move on to the capital budget. Capital budget is for next year, and as you recall, in prior years, I will come to you again before June 30th with this list, as well as any other contracts that we do not think we will be able to award by June 30th. So this list may grow, as we've done in prior years, but for now, based on where we are today, this is our requested budget for fiscal 18. As you can see, it's comprised of significant dollars for the Kamehameha Highway Guideway design build contract, park and ride lot construction, and toward the bottom of the list, real estate, right-of-way acquisition, new utilities or relocations, west side utility clearance issues, and we have put together all the project contingency, contract contingencies together as a single number there at the bottom. And so as I said, your board appropriates operating and capital costs on an annual fiscal year basis, lapsing every June 30th. Whatever contract staff does not think we will be able to award by June 30th of 2017, I will come back with this list as well as any of those contracts should we have them, to ask for your reappropriating those before the end of the current fiscal year and into next fiscal year. Just as a note, City Council adopts capital budgets on a 2-year basis. So the reappropriation number that we will be submitting to them will be slightly different than what we give to you because of the difference in timing.
So Diane, question on the real estate right away, that's assuming that we get all of the properties then by FY18.
Correct.
Okay.
That's based on their estimate to me and their plan of what they plan on acquiring through fiscal 18.
Okay.
So if there are no questions on the capital, the last thing we have here for the request is, this is just per board policy, putting together a cash flow or a capital plan. And if you recall, in prior years, until recently, we have just put forth an appropriation plan. of what we plan on appropriating. So the out years at this point in time are all zeros because you will have appropriated all the capital needed for the project. But what I've got for you here is based on input from you and our former board chair, put together a 6-year flow based on what our current revenue is and our current costs on a total program not to exceed $6.8 billion, which is what we currently have revenue for, funding for. So this is how it looks. It's a draft. I will be back to you with it as well before you adopt next year's budget. This does not go over to council and the mayor. This is just a HART document.
Dan, you're not showing this here, but for the cash flow for fiscal year 16 and 17, what do you have showing on the federal grant money? Because, you know, they're holding, what,
Yeah.
$500 million, right? So how does that play into
That
this?
cash flow assumes that we will be receiving grant funding as currently planned.
So if that timing is altered, you know, it's delayed further, then that's going to impact our debt service and the amount of bonds we need to issue and so forth, right?
It could, yes. So what I have today is based on the assumption that the grant funds are available to be drawn down as originally planned.
Do you recall offhand what those dates are?
The
When we would
dates-
be drawing down those funds?
We currently have funding through federal fiscal year 14. We have a 15, 16, and 17 tranches totaling approximately $700 million left on the grant. So our current cash flow assumes, we haven't spent all of the federal fiscal year 14 yet, so we haven't drawn down on that. There's still grant funds available to be drawn down. It's future grant funds that we are assuming for 16, 17, 18, and forwards cash flow as being available when needed to be drawn.
And that's dependent on the FTA accepting our recovery plan, correct?
Correct, or we are trying to have discussions with them to see if we can't get at least the FY15 appropriation released and available to us for further drawdown, because we are currently, like Diane said, we are currently drawing down on the FY14 appropriation, but we do expect that to run out sometime in the spring of 2017, at which point our assumption or our hope is that we still will not have yet submitted the full recovery plan. Right? Our goal or our hope is to be able to submit it in June of 2017. So we are going to be in discussions with them to see so that they do not impact our cash flow and kind of push us to have to borrow a little bit more than we need to just because the appropriations aren't available. So we are trying to have those discussions where the FY15 monies would be available so that we don't have to borrow additional funds unnecessarily.
How much is that FY15 money?
250 million. So we have 3 outstanding appropriations. FY15 and FY16 are both $250 million appropriations, and then FY17, which is the last remaining tranche of the 1.55, that amounts to about what 236 million or so, and that's the final appropriation that we would be receiving. And the FDA has made indications verbally that they would not cash trap us. So we would like to take them at their word that they would work with us, especially in light of the fact that we are trying to submit everything that they've requested as a part of the recovery plan process, that we are acting in good faith and that they in turn would look favorably upon that and at least allow us to draw down on the FY15 amount so that we don't have to do additional borrowing that we don't think that we need to. The additional borrowing is just going to add to the overall cost.
And so this 2018 through 2023 federal grant money, what is that?
That's just when we anticipate to be drawing down on the cumulative amount.
I
It's
see.
not,
Okay.
it's not respective to a specific fiscal year appropriation. It's just because the federal program is always, it's a reimbursable program. So the money just accumulates in an account that we then draw down upon whenever we have eligible costs.
I understand. Thank you.
Questions? Any other questions? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. So this capital FY18 capital budget and operating budget went to the Finance Committee. Finance Chair Terry Fuji.
Yeah, so the Finance Committee met on Thursday, November 10th, and went through the operating and capital budget with the staff in a lot more detail, but that packet is in front of you, not the PowerPoint presentation, but the more detailed packet. They answered the questions, and based on all of that discussion, the only change between the budget that we went through and the budget that you have in front of you today is the addition of the $250,000 for the special audit services. Other than that, based on the discussion and the questions, the Finance Committee is recommending approval to the full board.
Okay, thank you. So motion is to accept the FY18 capital and operating budgets. Do I hear a second?
Second.
We are taking public testimony at this time before we do a final vote. Anyone wishing to testify? Seeing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion carried. Let's see. Well, we're done. So 5 is calling for adjournment, but I want to thank the Finance Committee again for looking at the operating and capital budget real well to make sure. My understanding, we have a APTA, or what was it, audit that's coming up in January?
The peer review, they will be coming the week of January 9th toward the schedule.
Okay. And Mr. Murthy is coming on December
5th.
Okay. So our next meeting, call for adjournment for December 15th, I believe is our next HART meeting. Can I call for adjournment? Do I have a motion? Second, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Same.